Warm welcome for the session 2 on agrobiodiversity and climate change in the context of farming system for nutrition. We have a very distinguished panel here, chaired by Dr. Kumar, Dr. N.K. Krishna Kumar. He is a country representative and also for the South and Central Asia in the Biodiversity International in New Delhi. And he has a vast experience in handling programs related to horticulture and linking to nutrition. We have panelists here, Dr. Carl Rengard. He is the Vice President of NESFAS. He is one of the leading organizations in the Northeast Slow Food and Agrobiodiversity Society in the Northeast area. And he has a vast experience working with government, linking horticulture program to nutrition. And we have other distinguished panelists here, Dr. Geeta Lakshmi, warm welcome ma'am. And she is attached with Tamil Nadu Agriculture University and dealing with climate change and agriculture and farming system for nutrition interface. And we have Dr. S.B. Dandon. He is a licensed officer in the Biodiversity International Bangalore, and he has worked with universities, and also he has led important program dealing with sericulture and also agroforestry, horticulture, and so on. We have Dr. R.M. Kadresan from Annamalai University, and he is currently the Director and Research and Development in the Faculty of Agronomy in Annamalai University. And he has been handling so many international projects, including USAID and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation program, linking agrobiodiversity, agriculture and nutrition interface. And we have our faculty, Dr. Hariharan, Head Biotechnology, MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, is trying to link agrobiodiversity in the context of biofortified crops and initiating action related to genetic garden. And I'll also join the panel. My name is Oliver King. I work with the foundation in the program area of biodiversity. Now I request Dr. Kumar to make the introductory remarks.
Good afternoon to all of you. We are a few minutes late. My request all of you to keep your mobile in a vibrating mode if you have by chance activated it during the lunch hour. The session is on respected Carl, Geeta Lakshmi, Dandin, Vidya, Hariharan and Oliver King, Dr. S.A. Patil, and so many of the leading personnel who are here. This session is on agrobiodiversity, climate change and farming system for nutrition. Let me come from the last. Nutrition is not what the plant gives or the animal gives or fish gives. Nutrition by definition is a combination of process. It's a combination of process by which the organism receives and utilizes the energy necessary for growth, maintenance, renewal of its components and development. So it's basically what it is given from any source is not important, but it is also equally important as to how the whole process takes place in any system so that we make the best use of the nutrition. I think that marriage of the physiological processes by which the nutrition is taken inside and brought into the mainstream of the development. The second aspect which is very critical in this is the agrobiodiversity. We see very often persons talking about rice, talking about the nutritional value of rice, somebody talking about the nutritional value of millets, somebody talking about the nutritional value of vegetables. But it's not, it is the diversity which drives the nutrition. More colorful is your plate, better you are nutritionally there. The chain is as strong as the weakest link. So it's not a question of how many links you have, it's the question of what link you are missing. We often talk about pulses, generally taking protein, but what is most critical is which amino acid you are missing necessary for the physiological process. I think nutrition has to go a little more deeper than our understanding. The third aspect which we are talking is about the climate change. Today, if you have seen Hindu, there is already an article that the Arctic ice, how the Antarctic ice is breaking. Climate change has been accepted or is being accepted through scientific facts that it's for sure it is happening, except that we do not know the magnitude and the direction in which the climate change is going to happen. Probably there are going to be many unpredictable events that may take place, and South Asia and Southeast Asia and many other parts of the world are no exceptions. Global warming, rise in the sea levels, communicable diseases, and many other factors are going to impact. I was listening to many of the presentations since morning. We always talk nutrition from the perspectives of children, from the perspective of women, from the perspective of the youth and many others, and also the rural poor. But let us for once also think that the world is changing too fast. 50% of our population is going to be a graying population. Irrespective of whether you are a male or a female, whether you are rural or urban, your nutritional requirement will be not in terms of carbohydrates or proteins. It will be more in terms of sustenance with respect to minerals and proteins for the maintenance. This is a bomb which is likely to explode in a couple of years, and what drives the nutritional market across the stores is more driven by the necessity of the nutrition for the graying population. To a greater extent, there is quite a strong market linkage. And I think this is one area, considering the kind of diabetes, the kind of BP, the kind of many other things. And how do we really sustain this through nutrition? As Professor said, then it is the nutrition which is the edifice for good health. We can enormously reduce the cost of our expenditure on medicine if we address the aspect pertaining to the nutrition. Agrobiodiversity conservation, agrobiodiversity utilization, agrobiodiversity not just for food productivity but also for nutrition is a very, very critical aspect. And in this regard, under the chairmanship of the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, under the direction and the blessings of Dr. M.S. Swaminathan himself, the first World Agrobiodiversity Congress was inaugurated by none other than the Honorable Prime Minister. And one of the first things we have said is regard to the indexing of agrobiodiversity. This indexing of agrobiodiversity is our future for sustainability, and this sustainability is the one which is the edifice of our food security and nutrition. So without wasting much time, since we are already behind schedule, I would not like to go, but maybe at the end of the session, if there are any relevant points, I would like to add a few points. With this, I would request Carl Angan to just make his presentation.
Now I request Dr. Carl Ranga to make his presentation.
Good afternoon to you all, respected Professor Swaminathan, respected Chairman of this session, and my fellow panelists and friends. At the very onset, I bring greetings and apologies from our Chairman, Mr. Prang Roy, who couldn't be here today because of his other commitments, and he's asked me specifically to convey his apologies that he could not be here. As I've been introduced, I'm Dr. Carl Rangat. I'm an indigenous man from the northeast of India, and I belong to the Khasi tribe of Meghalaya. The northeast, as you know, is a biodiversity hotspot. It is, I read somewhere that, in some of the data of the government of India, that 76% of the biodiversity of the country resides in the northeast. I mean, that is with flora, fauna, and even microbial. So we are very rich in biodiversity. Meghalaya, as you can see from this slide also, my first slide, Meghalaya, as the name implies, it is the home of the clouds. This is where we get the highest rainfall in the world we get in Meghalaya. So when there's heavy rainfall, there's ambient temperature, we get a lot of biodiversity. And our main mandate is the defense of this biodiversity. My talk will center around the role of the indigenous peoples in conserving biodiversity. And I come from an organization, this is called the Northeast Slow Food and Agrobiodiversity Society. This is a grassroots organization of the Indigenous Partnership from Rome. So we work with the indigenous communities in the northeast of India. Our main focus areas are in mainstreaming biodiversity for well-being. Well-being we see as not as well-being as the accumulation of wealth. Well-being we see as the connectivity of the communities amongst themselves, we with communities, and the connectivity of we as indigenous people with the land, with Mother Earth. So this is the mainstreaming of biodiversity for well-being. And of course, this we work through the local food systems, because we believe that once the local food systems, enough has been spoken in the morning with various speakers, the local food systems, they do indicate the diversity of our land. And we as the indigenous peoples, in even the FAO reports and the Biodiversity International reports have said that the indigenous peoples of the world are the people who are the stewards or the guardians of biodiversity. So I stand here as one of these indigenous peoples who is working with our own people for the defense of this biodiversity. We are working with agroecology as our major plank, and we as tribals, as you may know about tribals, we love to sing and dance. So cultures and traditions, we work to the maintenance of the conservation of biodiversity through the cultures, through dances, through songs, through dramas, through plays, etc. And of course, food and nutritional security. Just now, Dr. Kumar touched exactly what I always tell my farmers and our communities, that irrespective of whether you know how much protein, or if you don't need to know how much protein or how much all these foods out there, just see that there's more color on your plate. The more color you have, the more nutrition you will get. So if you're eating only rice and potatoes, be sure that you are not getting enough nutrition. So agrobiodiversity-based traditional food systems, we have a lot of systems in our place. What we do is that these agrobiodiversity-based food systems, we have livelihood systems wherein the eri silk, especially eri silk, which is very unique to Meghalaya, the eri silk, we encourage these farmers for the livelihoods. Of course, the livelihoods on agrobiodiversity livelihood systems also I will be touching briefly ahead. The tip-off for NESFAS came when we organized and hosted, along with 41 communities of Meghalaya, we hosted the Indigenous Terra Madre in 2015, where more than 60 countries came. Delegates from more than 60 countries attended, and we had people from about 169 food communities from all over the world who came. And these people were so much enthused when they saw our people, how we live with the biodiversity, how we live, the food we eat, even the clothes, the indigenous clothes that we wear, they're all based on biodiversity. And what happened, they took this message all over the world, and we are getting back very strong feedback from all over the world. So the tip-off was this, when we did this ITM. Now, what I was talking about, the role of the indigenous peoples in biodiversity conservation. We had recently there was an article in the newspapers. I've just put the clipping that the indigenous peoples are the gene banks of the world. Now, if you see here, in this table, this was a study which was commissioned by the World Bank and which was done by Biodiversity International, and they have listed the indigenous groups in the third column. If you look at where I have circled is about South Asia. India houses up to 461 indigenous groups in India alone. This is the highest concentration of indigenous peoples in any country in the world. Is 461 indigenous communities are here in India. And out of this 461, over 200 of these communities are residing in the northeast itself, mostly tribal populations, but other indigenous communities also. So it is in this defense, when we are defending these farming systems and food systems through the food, through the traditions, through the cultures, we have these biodiversity fairs, which are, again, they're not new to all of you, but we have these biodiversity fairs in the villages. And these biodiversity fairs and seed fairs, because our indigenous peoples are so, the seed keeping, especially the ladies, it is the women who are the seed keepers amongst our traditional people. And seed keeping, seed exchange, and seed and even planting material exchange happens during those biodiversity fairs. Now, we bring these people, all our communities, at different places all over the state, and even in Nagaland, etc., in what we call the Meram O markets. Meram O has become a brand. Meram O is in our language. Meram O means Mother Earth. So these are the Mother Earth or the Earth markets. They are different from farmer markets, where farmers come with our produce which they are cultivating. These are Earth markets, which bring all the foraged wild edibles, the medicinal plants, etc. These are the Meram O markets, which have become, and Meram O, as I said, through the ITM, Meram O has become a brand with us. These earth markets we have, like I'm showing you here, all over in the villages. In this slide, you can see even young boys, which we have been concentrating a lot on the youth, and I will be talking a little bit more about the youth. These youth, we have these drummers in the open fields during the Meram O earth markets, and these are mostly spontaneous. And they are, or the youth come up with what we call the flash mobs. They just come spontaneously and start talking about what they're doing. So these Meram O festivals, I'm just showing you. This another concept which for the livelihood we're doing is these Meram O cafes. Again, Mother Earth cafes. So these Mother Earth cafes, the local custodians of the foods, the ladies, they cook the foods in these shops, and these shops are becoming a big rage now, because we're getting the total indigenous foods here. On the right hand corner, you will see a small cup of tea. That's called shakrot tea. This tea is come from the roots of one plant, and it is amongst our medicinal plants, medicinal men in Meghalaya. This root is being given a lot in the local medicines. Now this tea has also become one of the signs, the signs of the NESFAS and the indigenous cultures that we are doing. Nutrition, here you will see these, they look like strawberries, but actually they are wild berries in the hand of a person here. And we are doing this nutrition studies through the schools. Through the school gardens. We are encouraging the school children to learn about these things through these. And we have done these case studies with the McGill University and the National Institute of Nutrition from Hyderabad. Dr. Longwa is here. We have done these case studies have been, but unfortunately we due to other constraints, we have not received the results from the National Institute of Nutrition yet. But I have a bit of a sad news in the sense that one of the things that has been shown, that these studies have been done in the very remote villages of Meghalaya, and the people are staying in the middle of biodiversity, yet there is a lot of incidents of malnutrition. I leave that question open, because that is why we need to, we would like to propose more and more research and follow-up action on this. Now, climate change. We are also addressing climate change in our own small way. Generally, people see climate change as a challenge. We see climate change as an opportunity. Here in this picture, you will see our our local knowledge holders who are sitting in the field, they tell us it is the sense of urgency amongst them. They themselves understand what's happening with climate change. In fact, just a few months ago, one of these ladies told me that, you see, in our place, it is a cold place. And when we grow mint or podina, we know, generally by December, January, it is dead. But the roots are living, and they start sprouting in March, April. This lady told me just last few months ago that the world is coming to an end because Padina is already sprouting in January, she said. There is a sense of urgency amongst them, and that's why we tell them about the climate change, why it is happening, and so we see it as more of as an opportunity rather than a threat. So we go through about the climate change. We have these school gardens which we are doing all over Meghalaya. In these school gardens, school children bring these wild edibles from their vicinity of their schools in the forest, etc., and they're grown in these. So just finishing. So and these school children themselves then spread the news. We have the Cooks Alliance, which we have the professional cooks as well as the indigenous cooks who come and bring these fusion foods and help these Meram O cafes to give what one of our friends was asking about tasty indigenous foods. Composting, this morning in the other section we were talking about farmyard manure and dung. Even in Meghalaya, animal husbandry is almost non-existent. So we don't have farmyard manure. We don't have cow dung. We do have pig dung and poultry dung, which is not enough. So we from NESPAS have started the movement of composting for biomass conversion by the use of the plentiful biomass that we have, converting this biomass into compost, which we all know how it helps in carbon sequestration and even increasing the soil porosity and water holding capacity of soils. This is just a slide which I'm showing you, which Dr. Daphne Miller showed to us during ITM, is the relationship of man with soil. The picture on the left is a cross-section of our intestines, and the picture on your right is the cross-section, is a soil profile. Both look almost the same, both have microbes. We cannot live without microbes in our stomach. Our digestion, we will not be able to do any digestion unless we have microbes. So this is just a relationship that we should need to know how to honor the soil and respect the soil. We have our networking, and we call it local to global. We network in the country as well as outside the country, and we try to network among other indigenous communities and other people who work all over the country and the world. So just to wrap up what I've been saying is in 3 short points, is that the indigenous communities are the keepers and stewards of biodiversity. We concentrate a lot on the youth, but we need to make the agrobiodiversity or biodiversity attractive. We have to glorify it. We have what we call these intergenerational and intercultural exchanges. We concentrate a lot on talking with the young people, and we have what we call these youth parliaments. So through these youth parliaments, we have found a lot, and the youth are very much enthused. Now slowly they're being enthused and getting the sense of danger of the climate change and what role they should play. We are also helping, because if we are to address the youth, we need to look at employment avenues for them. And employment avenues, I'm not saying about the normal employment avenues, but we are helping them through rural tourism, which includes agrobiodiversity walks. We are having a lot of people who are coming and participating in our agrobiodiversity walks, in our food festivals, etc., etc. And so these young boys and girls are being employed. They're getting employment by doing these things. And of course, the most important thing for us is a strong research base for nutritional status. We talk a lot about these wild edibles being nutritious, but we really can't say what is there in the nutrition. We would like if a kind of policy is made where more and more of these nutrition, these wild edibles and the agro-based plants that the indigenous peoples eat, we get to know the exact nutritional value of these things so that we can talk creditably amongst the people. So I would say thank you. In our language, we call it Kublai Namaste. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Kaul, for sharing that rich experience from Northeast. Now I call upon Dr. Geeta Lakshmi.
The most respected and beloved Professor Dr. MSS, who has been a great source of inspiration to all of us, and chairperson of this panel, co-chair, my fellow panelists, and esteemed guests of this great function. Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I thank the organizers who have given me the great opportunity to be one of the panelists of this important session, climate change, farming system, and food security. You know, we all are feeling the heat of climate change. Everybody are feeling the heat of climate change. All walks of life and all sectors are experiencing the impact of changing climatic conditions. And the major issue as far as us is concerned, the impact of climate change is becoming more because more than 70% of the people are poor and they are living on the rural areas. That's why the impact is becoming more and more. And 90% of the farms in the world is belonging to small farmers, who are having less than 2 hectares of land. And low level of technology adoption. We have got a lot of technologies with us, but the adoption level of technologies are too low as far as the small and marginal farmers are concerned. Though we are producing so much of food, the insecurity is still existing. My earlier speaker was speaking, like even with so much of hotspot in biodiversity and so much of natural wealth available with Meghalaya, even then they had a lot of insecurity in food. So this kind of situation not only is prevailing in Meghalaya, but it is also prevailing everywhere in the country as well as in the world. The other major issues are, we know that the population is growing, but at the same time, for feeding the growing population, we may have to have 14% more food by the mid-century. By 2050, we may have to have 14% more food grain requirement. But what we have done so far is, we have overexploited the natural resources and our yield levels have become a plateau. So we are not anymore able to increase the food by our technologies, and most of our research is concentrating on how to break the barrier of yield plateaus. So that is the most important research we are taking up. And more area is also diverted to non-agricultural purpose, especially most of the area is going for the real estate purpose, and also for other non-agricultural land area is going more and more. On top of it, we have the changing climatic condition. You know, the changing climate is already, we are in a fragile ecosystem. Any change, either in terms of temperature or in terms of rainfall fluctuations, it will definitely have more impact on the agriculture sector. And you know, like most of the models are saying that because of the changing climatic condition, at least a minimum of 2% reduction in food is going to be, overall average food grain production is going to be declined by 2%. So 14% increase in food grain we require. At the same time, we are going to have 2% decline in food production. In total put together, we will have shortfall of 16% food demand in mid-century. So that is the situation which we are going to face. And this is one slide which I just want to show, because when we just model the future impacts of climate change, most of the models are saying that the major food crops, especially the wheat, rice, soybean, maize, those kind of food crops are going to have negative impact of changing climatic condition in terms of almost 5 to 10% in the 2030s. That means in another 10-12 years more. And by 2050s, we are going to have 20% decline in food grain production of these important crops. You know, these are the 3-4 crops which is actually taking care of the entire calorie need of the people. So these food grains are going to have so much of impact, negative impact. As far as today's agriculture is concerned, agriculture is the major user of water, especially the fresh water. More than 80% is used by agriculture, especially the water consuming crops like paddy, sugarcane, and most of the long duration crops. But it is not taking care of the environment, you know, because the GHG emission is almost 24% of the total GHG emission is from agriculture sector, especially from the paddy and also from the livestock sector. We have got more than 24% of the GHG emission coming out. It is also not taking care of the nutritional needs, especially like when my previous speaker was saying the people are having lot of nutritional disorders. Almost every 1/4 of the people, almost 25% of the people are suffering from micronutrient deficiencies, malnutrition, and obesity kind of a problem. So this is existing as of now. So the main challenge for us is going to be from the focus of increased productivity alone. So once upon a time, we have to just increase the production, especially in the 1960s when we had first green revolution. Our aim was to make ourselves self-sufficient and to make the people to eat. So that was the condition wherein we were concentrating on only increasing the food production. But now we have to concentrate something else, which is natural resource management with food and nutritional security. So on top of it, we have to have the two strings, that is the environmental safety as well as the nutritional security. So there are few solutions. One is the taking care of biodiversity, especially the agrobiodiversity, and then the traditional indigenous knowledge of the people, because they have the wealth of knowledge. Indigenous people know what to do when there is some extreme kind of conditions happen. So we have to always take that into consideration and attach the scientific knowledge from our end. And then the climate smart farming. This is very, very important. You know, the days are coming. For one example I can quote is, you know, like we cannot leave rice. Whatever the consuming of it is consuming more water, it is consuming so much of greenhouse gas emission is happening from rice field, but still we cannot leave rice because that is our basic food. That is our basic calorific requirement and basic food. So if we just see what is going to happen in the future with rice cultivation, today if we are cultivating the rice with 1200 millimeters of water, if you don't change your technologies, you may require 1500 millimeters of water to produce the same quantum of output. So where do you have water? Already we are fighting for water from the other neighboring states and other kind of conflicts we have. So in such situation, it is very difficult for us to have so much of water for producing rice. So we have to have some alternate technologies which are called climate smart technologies and climate smart farming. Just an example I quoted. Similarly, we can think of integrated nutrient management and so on. The major idea is we have to have weather-based decisions. If we don't consider weather in our future farming plans, we will definitely end up with so much of hodgepodges. The reason is, for example, if you are expecting 2 days later, if you are expecting rainfall, you don't have to irrigate. If you are expecting a heavy shower, you don't have to have plant protection measures and pollute the environment, because the environment itself will take care of washing away the pests. So this kind of things we have to always have in mind. And in future, we have to definitely take care of our soil, we have to take care of our nutrients and also all the other natural ecosystems, water balance in deciding the major strategic decisions of agriculture. Another important thing is crop insurance as a safety net. You know, the extreme weather events are frequently occurring, so we definitely have to have some mechanism by which the farmers are protected so that the suicide of the farmers are reduced. So these kind of things we have to definitely have in mind and design a very weather-based products so that it could be taken care of the hodgepodges. Then ecosystem services, how we could reduce the greenhouse gas emission. One good technology is, for example, again I'll just quote the rice. We can go with the SRA, which will reduce the methane emission from the rice ecosystem. So these kind of things we have to always have in mind. So as far as the challenges in biodiversity, especially the agrobiodiversity is concerned, the habitat loss and degradation. Mainly what we have done is, we have exhausted so much of fresh water. At the same time, we have alien species, and also the native varieties, we have forgotten to use it. Right, we have all gone with the high yielding varieties which are nutrient intensive, which are water intensive, but we are not growing anymore the local varieties, thinking that it is giving low yield. But we have to definitely have in our program to use those local races which could be improved for using the resistance breeding. For example, heat tolerant, drought tolerant. We have varieties, traditional varieties, which can come up with either drought or flood. It will give some potential yield. So those kind of things we have to take into consideration and use it for our breeding purposes. Coming to the agrobiodiversity, as I was just indicating, 75% of the global thing is from the 12 plants and just 5 animal species. especially the three crops, rice, maize and wheat, which contribute to 60% of the calorific requirement. So we have to have local gene pool, especially with the high yielding varieties. We have gone enough damage, but I'm not saying that we have to completely avoid the high yielding varieties. The important message here is we have to use our local land races for improving our own varieties, which could serve the purpose under the changing climatic condition. Wild species and land races are always available. We need to identify the potential of it and we have to use it, especially the monoculture. Monoculture replaced all the well-adapted old cultures. So we have to have mixed cropping kind of a thing. Mixed cropping, especially with the two different kind of a species. One may have shallow root system, another may have the deeper root system, so that the entire profile of the soil is used for exhausting the natural resources by the crop in a balanced way. The neglected and underutilized crops and species. I was so happy in the lunchtime. You know, we had minor millet products, everything. We had 3 different type of idlis with minor millets. I was so happy to look at that. You know, we had only the rice and wheat based kind of a thing. We have neglected all the minor millet kind of a thing, which are so nutrient rich, fiber rich, and it can reduce all our health problems. So these kind of things has to be given importance. Soil organisms, especially in the cultivated areas. My earlier speaker even touched upon in his last slide how he compared the intestine and the soil system. So the soil system is really important. It has got so much of life. So those life in the soil system has to be protected well through the traditional organic manuring and organic farming practices. So we are dumping so much of fertilizers and so much of chemicals on the soil, which is actually degrading the soil to a greater extent. So this we have to have in mind, and we need to take care of that. Especially, I just want to quote one example wherein I was working in a Kalingarayan basin. You know, there was so much of polluted water which went into the soil, and it made that land unsuitable. The people who are going and planting the paddy seedlings, they had all the skin diseases. The cancer rate is so much high in that area because of only the pollution from the textile industry. So these kind of things we have to really take care of. And you know, the other important thing is introduced species. We have to be very careful when we introduce some exotic species into our system. These are some of the introduced species which has become a very problematic things, and introduced pests as well. So indigenous things are much more important rather than the introduced one. Anthropogenic threats, for example, soil mismanagement, and then salinization and dryland degradation, over extraction of groundwater. These are all some of the important issues which we have to always take care of to sustain the production and to reduce the nutritional imbalance. So climate smart farming, as I was just indicating, we need to follow up all these things so that crop insurance, integrated nutrient management, IFS, agroforestry. Agroforestry is one system wherein we have forgotten. We have to introduce the perennial trees which sequester a lot of carbon into its body, and also it provides a favorable microclimate which can enhance the productivity of the crops. So this is my last slide. To conclude, our health depends upon reliable, nutritious and adequate supply of food, and then this actually is getting impacted by the changing climatic condition. So weather plays a major role, and production variability may affect food prices and food security and so on. So farmers can implement adaptation strategies which we need to, as a scientist, we need to find out, validate, and then give them in a palatable form. So we are addressing through different projects. For example, there is one international project with involving different continents. We are trying to address the uncertainty issues. That project is the ADMIP project. We are trying to address the uncertainty issues in that, in terms of assessing the impact and in terms of finding out the solutions. So this kind of research collaboration across the border is definitely important so that we solve the issues at a local level. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Respected Professor M.S. Swaminathan, the Chairperson Dr. Kumar, my co-panelists and friends of the dais. On behalf of Biodiversity International, we, on behalf of Dr. Krishna also, we convey our many happy returns of the day up to the Professor Swaminathan's birthday, and we wish he keeps on advising us till he completes century and beyond. Climate change, malnutrition, then seeking biodiversity and environmental degradation. This is more precisely, we have given as an FAO agenda how to safeguard the future by safeguarding this. The global malnutrition have already spoken by everybody. I don't want to dwell upon it. Only one thing, obesity is also equally important to care of not only the nutrition, but it is because of malnutrition. Then challenge of the climate change. We are going to lose 8% of the total productivity in a years to come. And Dr. Vijayalakshmi has told that we are going to lose the yield of the major crops. Third one is land degradation. Yes, it is happening, and still we are not worrying much about it. Then Dr. Benige has told, Niru means if water is there, you are there. If water is not there, you are not there. That is one of the major challenge what we have to do it. Then coming to my main topic, the earth has sustained about 391,000 plant species, and it is 5,538 species are being cultivated, and finally we end up with 12 and 3. So all these three major players with 5 animal source are sustaining life. At the same time, they are creating problems on nutrition and healthy life. It is food is not alone the requirement, but nutrition is its condition. Considering this important thing, agriculture and tree biodiversity is a part of solution as recognized by Biodiversity International. It is a foundation of agriculture. It is the fight pest and diseases and mitigate climate change. These are the three issues the biodiversity can effectively mitigate. Then we call why biodiversity. It is said all flesh is grass. Grass doesn't mean it is super grass. It is a biodiversity which meets all the needs of the human being of the 4 F's: food, fuel, fiber, and also the textiles. And everything what we derive is again out of this. And these all the points we are all very much familiar. For last 2 days we are doing it. And now what is to be done is more important. That is what is happening. Now in the Professor Swaminathan's introductory speech, he said, conserve, cultivate, commercialize and consume. We have to reverse the whole cycle. It is first start consuming, then you start producing. If you start producing, you must start growing, then again it is a conservation. So this is how we should look into the gene banks. Need not be a museums of living plants and animals. They should be effectively used for the purpose of the final impact, improved ecosystem, the nutrition and income and other livelihood benefits. In this regard, these are the few 3 things what we really mean what it is. Healthy diets from the sustainable food system, productive and resilient farms and forest systems. It is ecosystem. It is the habitats which are more important than anything else. So why now it is important is now because the government policy, the people's understanding, and also the people's eating habit have emphasized the 3 great crops. As a result, all other crops have been sidelined. They have been neglected, not by themselves but by the whole policy and the system as such. We say millets are not more productive. And what we have done for millet production? There is a question to be asked. And if that all we have to bring them to the mainstream, then we need a lot of policy support, the agriculture, the R&D support, and also the individual farmer support. Then only they can be mainstreamed. Then, as you know, now they have become more important because we are fed up with paying more to doctor rather than paying more to food. So let us reverse the cycle. Let us give attention to the food what we eat rather than to the medicine what we are going to get prescribed by the doctor. That is precisely now we have to have a more R&D approaches on the neglected and underutilized crops. It is a news in US. It is neglected and underutilized crops. Whole world now talks about it, and FAO, it has become the main agenda, and also the other organizations, either be it nutrition, be it economics, or be it the overall well-being of the population. Then we have FAO has identified some criteria and supported by the World Health. What to mainstream, how to recognize. It is the nutritional composition, the first and foremost agenda, if at all you want to select a food for the future. Then adaptation to local environments, that is again it is already there. Then related to climate change. As I said, most biodiverse countries are the nutrition hunger countries. They have biodiversity, but they are not properly using it. Then they have the religious climate, spend 10% of the 3 crops on the post-harvest. Probably this neglected and crops will be more useful to our purpose. In the recently concluded December 2015, January 2016, the FAO has called all the South Asian countries, and these are the crops identified as an indicative. But we can be added for more based on the local food system, based on the consumer preference, and based on the economic potential. Now the term NUS, neglected underutilized species, has been reworded as future smart food, FSFs. So if you call them as FSFs, and the stigma attached to the poor man's food need not be continued, it can be called the healthy foods. So then if the healthy, the word itself creates a lot of impact on the mind change. If you call healthy food, everybody starts eating. If you call more man's food, no, it is more poor man's food. Why I should? We are healthily poor, but not, we are healthily poor, though we are economically rich. Other way around is not true. Friends, at Biodiversity International, an initiative has been started to work on identification, prioritization, and bringing the mainstream of 5 and 6 nutritional neglected tropical fruits. Of these, we have taken as a first place the 5 crops. It is jackfruit, it is the custard apple, it is the burr, it is the drumstick, it is the jamun, and it is the tamarind. These are the indigenous fruits with lot of variability available in our hands, but we have not been able to do much on this, and how we can. As an example, last 2 years we have been able to bring only out of this, we are now working on that, the jackfruit as a candidate crop, just like any other crops. And jackfruit is nowhere inferior to potato, either in yield or in nutrition or in any aspect of it, and see the yield of one jackfruit is a candidate. Even a given point of time, you have 5,000 plant fruits in this tree, and we have identified about 32 such type of trees which are good in various aspects. And many people know only jack with a yellow rind. See the variety, see the color, see the aroma of the jackfruits, which have not been evolved by any scientists, which have not been developed by any of the R&D organizations. They are the crop plants which have been maintained by the custodian farmers in India, in Nepal, in Malaysia, in Myanmar, and other countries. Now we have a network program on jack, how best jack can be made available, because jackfruit doesn't require any of your care. Jackfruit doesn't require more of your space. Jackfruit doesn't require more of your water. Without much attention, as a side crop, as a bund crop, it can produce large amount of edible portion. And the jack is not only the fruit, it is the fruit of medicine, it is the fruit of livelihood, and it is fruit of whatever you want. That's why you call jack is not a jack, and jack is jack of all fruits. These are the products. We have now 52 products available in market prepared out of jacks. You name the product, you have it. And this is not any, Dr. Longwa is here, and we have to take traditional knowledge to laboratory knowledge and see how best. The today's cook I was discussing, he has brought several things to the mainstream. So such people can be asked to refine the recipes, asked to refine, bring them to the food chain of the big hotels. If we eat in a big hotel, we will ask our wives also to prepare that the hotel was good. If it is from the village, we say, no, village are prepared, why you do want? So our mindset has to be changed. Kindly look into this aspect. Then what is the way forward? Change the perception. That is the most important aspect. Then also, we have to have the crops to be listed, to be prioritized, to be worked, and enhance research, develop or update the refined good agriculture practices. Indicate, because there are 800 institutes working on rice and wheat. You are not yet on these minor food crops. What is it? Have they committed any sin? No. But we are the people. If you don't work with that, it is the greatest sin for our purpose. This is how we have to develop capacity and add value to the applied market chains. And this is village people are having all the knowledge. Collect it, compile it, and also see whether how we can refine it and bring back to the mainstream of work, so that our tomorrow will be more healthy, more nutritious, with a less cost. I thank the organizers for having given me this opportunity. Friends, we have a genetic diversity park at Bangalore, where we have 105 species of the wild fruits available and planted. They are yielding. Anybody who is interested to this one, our the website is there, and we will be too happy to share the knowledge, to share the planting material, and also get benefited how to mainstream these crops. Thank you very much, friends.
Thank you, Dr. Dandin, for sharing your thoughts on future smart foods and its role in food and nutrition. Now I call upon Dr. R.M. Kadiresan, Director, Faculty of Agronomy, Annamalai University.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start, from the time I started studying agriculture, I have been looking at one doyen or deity as the architect of Green Revolution, and I should thank all of you, the organizers, the chairman, the panelists, and especially the executive director, Dr. Selvam, for giving me this opportunity to submit the work before such a worshipped illusionary god for me, Professor M.S. Swaminathan, and I take his blessings before I start doing the work. Actually, I have no theory or concept or policy to present before you. This is the work that we have been doing for the past 15 years. This is with regard to integration of different animal components in rice farming. Because I come from an area that grows rice, 3 crops of rice some 30 years back, the Kaveri Delta, the so-called Kaveri Delta. I am from the tail end of Kaveri Delta, and now the 3 crops of rice have been reduced to only 1 crop because of dispute in river water sharing. And not only that, the location is in Kadalur district, which is a coastal district, and I am surrounded by 2 more districts, Nagapattinam and Viluppuram, which are also coastal. And I am from Annamalai University, a university which is residential in nature, just like BHU, and we have a faculty of agriculture, and we do work on agriculture. And this is the location, you can see. And as pointed out by my previous speakers, the advantage of our farming segment is that we have fragmented small holdings so that farming systems can fit in very well. Suppose if it is a large holding like in the west, it will not be possible to implement farming systems. And as I told you, all these districts, 3 districts contribute for 30% of the rice area, and we grow rice as wetland transplanted rice. And I have a small data to be presented before you. The last 30 years branched into 3 segments of 10 years each. You look at the annual rainfall, it has increased by around 230 millimeters from the 1980 to 1990 to 2000 to 2010. There is an increase by 230 millimeters of rainfall. Normally, my previous speaker will agree with me, we agronomists look at precipitation or rainfall, but we forget to look at evaporation. If you look at the evaporation, between these segments there is a decrease in evaporation of 450 millimeters. So increase in precipitation by 230 and decrease in evaporation by 450, and number of years wherein the annual rainfall is more than 20%, wet years, there had been 2 in the first segment, but whereas there had been 5 wet years in the last 2 segments. What does it indicate? Flash floods that take away the single crop of rice for the farmer, completely damage and wipe out. So this is the condition, and I was looking at the odds the farmers face. Lack of diversification went over there. As pointed out, they have been going for monocropping of rice, and that too monsoon dependent, because the river water is not there, frequent inundation and crop failure, and meager returns from rice, and that leads to poor economic status, underemployment and undernourishment. And then way back in 1995 we started looking at the best animal component to be integrated with rice, and we are the first to take up statistically laid out replicated field experiment in a farming system comparing different animal components like rabbit, poultry, Japanese quail, duckery to be integrated with rice, and we found that fish and poultry, they go well with rice, because rabbits were also adding more of organic manure, but they could not withstand the humidity and the temperature conditions that prevails over rice. And these components, as I told, I am not telling you anything new. All these have been well predicted by our ancestors. And in my own vernacular Tamil language, thousands of years back, Andal in Tirupavai said, Ongu Perenallodu Oodu Kayal Opa. So that was the integration of fish in rice is long back we have been seeing, but we have not documented the advantage of integrating fish in rice. So that is what I tried to do, and we had greenhouse experiments, and we tried different component or different species of fish, using them as biocontrol agents of weeds in rice, and we found this is the data, and we had 3 different representatives of weeds like sedges, grasses, and broadleaves, and in all that grass carp was doing better. And also we were measuring the quantity of poultry manure that were added, because every poultry bird was reared over the rice crop for 45 days, and the first 15 days this much quantity is added, next 15 days this much quantity. So total in 1 year there were about 18 tons of poultry waste added to the rice field. This is what we quantified. And not only that, the impact of poultry manure on the wheat seed germination, Echinoclova, because poultry manure is slightly acidic. Not only that, it has allelomediatory principles. Thereby, poultry manure dropping was also complementing wheat control. And then in another set of experiments, we had rice alone and rice, fish, poultry compared with exclusive inorganic inputs, with exclusive organic inputs, and a mixture of both. And you can see from the graph, the last 4, that is rice, fish, poultry, especially with complete organic mode, contributes better for bringing down the pest incidence in rice. And with that, we went with the DBT support for on-farm participatory experiments with rice, fish, and poultry, because it's my requirement to optimize the number of poultry birds that can be stacked over the rice and the area by which the poultry cages can cover or shade the crop. And we found that not more than 20 birds occupying 24 square foot and not more than 1 trench occupying 10% of the rice area is good. Then with that, we went for a National Agricultural Innovation Project sponsored by World Bank and ICAR, and we had 4 districts, and we have optimized the technology. You can see this is the technology, because it may appear to be very simple. You are growing poultry, birds, and fish in rice, but when we go into the field, unless we have a definite package, this many birds over this many area, because the difference here is, it is not that in a separate pond the poultry cages are raised. The poultry cages are raised exactly above the rice crop canopy. The advantage, I was submitting this in the State Planning Commission of Tamil Nadu, then the Vice President Shantashila Nair complimented that. She had been a poultry secretary earlier, and collecting the poultry waste and adding it to the field is a very difficult job. Nobody will do that. But when we stack the birds just above the rice crop with wire mesh bottom, the manure is added straight to the field, and there is standing water. The poultry waste goes as a feed for the fish and manure for the crop. So this is the advantage of this technology. And thereafter we divided the 4 districts into 2 different types of clusters. One wetland clusters going for rice, another upland clusters, and these are all the villages. We had 100 farmers in each cluster and 100 landless laborers. I am not covering landless laborers in this presentation for lack of time. And this is how a cluster looks like, with rice fields, poultry cages above the crop canopy, and fish trenches inside, wherein the fishes will be released. It is 1 meter deep, and during the peak sunny hours, the temperature fluctuation, the fishes will not be able to tolerate. So they will go and take shelter here, but the water will be in level, and they will swim into the rice field and feed on the weeds and pests. And this is the livelihood enhancement. You can see, because in Viluppuram district they had underground water potential, so they had 3 crops and 7 generations of poultry. Whereas in Kadalur and Nagapattinam they had only 1 crop and 5 generations. And this is how the livelihood enhancement within 3 years they had. Now our motto is doubling the farmer's income. I was able to achieve almost the same with Viluppuram district, 98% livelihood enhancement. And this is only from 5 cents, 200 square meter only we gave the inputs like poultry cage, poultry, birds, and fish fingerlings. And manurial addition, as I told, it is around 18 tons per hectare. And without any agro input, the pest incidence has come down in all the districts. And one difficulty was the farmers were finding it difficult to market the birds. And they used to say, because normally our rice season starts in August, we give poultry birds. and then they will sell it in September middle. When we give the next generation bird in September middle, it will come in November, and it is all Sabarimala season. Nobody will eat meat. So the farmers are constrained to take marketing of meat. So we ask them to have a place, and we help them to organize their own retail outlets. By that way, we solved the problem. And for uplands, we had goats, and we experimented what is the complementary effect of goat on weed control. We allowed them to graze alone, and then we allowed them to manure alone, and a combination of grazing and manuring we traced, and we found that grazing is more effective in controlling weeds rather than manuring. But anyhow, grazing and manuring also complemented weed control, and for every acre he has to have 4 goats. The difference in goat rearing is we insisted that these goats should graze on the cultivated fields in the off season. Normally when they go for rearing goats, they allow them to graze on or ranch on normal field or any other field, so that in certain villages there is a ban on goat grazing. But here we ask them to use them for grazing in their own field during the off season, and this is the livelihood enhancement with goat integration. And weed suppression also occurred. This is a district-wise data with 1,000 farmers. What I am presenting to you is the data obtained from 1,000 farmers. And thereafter we went with a BMGF project with 1 cluster and 75 women farmers to trace the nutrition of rice, fish, poultry and goat plus crop on the nutritional standards of women, and we have a data here. Increase in poultry meat intake by 170%. All these 75 women farmers were compared with a segment of control farmers 30, and the intake of poultry meat increased by 170%, fish meat intake by 8 times, whereas increase in vegetable intake by 20. And not only that, the blood hemoglobin count of all the development partner or beneficiary of wetland cluster increased from 11.7 gram to 13.9 gram, folic acid level from 7.61 nanogram to 8.76 nanogram, and we had increase in serum albumin and then calcium level, globulin level. This is the data that we have documented, and with that BMGF initial intervention development grant, we are waiting for transition to scale so that we can spread it to other areas. And now with USAID and India Knowledge Park, we will be replicating these experiments in Nepal. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Dr. Kadiresan, for sharing your experience in integrated farming system in the context of farming system for nutrition. Now I call upon Dr. G.N. Hariharan, Director Biotechnology, MS Swaminathan Research Foundation, to make his presentation.
Good afternoon, respected Professor, Chair, my fellow panelists, and distinguished delegates of the dais. In fact, you heard all my previous speakers. They touched upon from global issues to local issues, increasing production and all those things. I am going to take a little bit a deviation from what they spoke to you. You know, we interact with Professor, and always he is a man of action, so he insisted that we have to give a roadmap of how exactly we can really conserve the vanishing germplasm of these naturally nutridense and biofortified plants. So I am going to present you within the 10 minutes time you have given an action plan for eliminating hunger and malnutrition by establishing a grid of genetic garden for this important plant material. I don't need to talk about these next two slides to this august audience. It is about UN Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 2 talks about end hunger and also achieve food and nutrition security through by promoting sustainable agriculture. UNICEF Strategic Plan 2014-17 also talks much about nutrition, and the west part is a larger population lives in this part of the world. So under these circumstances, when we look at the farming system, you know, crops and other things are different. When you think about farming systems in the country, yesterday the secretary mentioned about identification around 41 different types of farming system that exist in our country. Today morning I am talking to some of my learned panel people. They are talking farming system varies from within the village depending upon the affluence levels or the product fertile soils and so on. Farming systems vary and things like that. So under that circumstances, we need to think about how exactly we can really chronicle all those important genetic material available with us, so that today we conserve and it is for the future generation to really use it and relish it and so on. See, this is a very saddest scenario. We work very closely with the farmers in the Kannivadi region of the Dindukal. Ms. Jairani used to say, earlier we used to get everything from our farm, but today we have to buy everything from the market. This is the kind of a scenario that we have in the current scenario is. But two important publications went from foundation. It's publications of Professor, which provided us the roadmap of how to achieve this. And in these two publications, his strategy is, his advice is to get a food-based and not the drug-based approach to achieve nutrition security. And I have given the references. So, when we look at the malnutrition status in our country, India is the home of 1/4 of all undernourished people worldwide, even though it attained self-sufficiency in cereal production. And with respect to malnutrition, it is most common micronutrient deficiency are iron, iodine, vitamin A, D, folate, zinc and selenium. So how exactly we can address this? So by looking at edible plants, they are the largest supplier of human nutritive elements, and they contain minerals and contain enormous amount of varietal diversity. You go to from one district to the other, if you visit even within Tamil Nadu, where the agroecological conditions are same, you will see a large number of varieties and so on. So within them, one set of plant is naturally nutrient-dense plants like moringa, sesbania, jujubas. Professor talked about this yesterday. And another one, crops which are developed through breeding, biofortified crop varieties, selected by Mendelian breeding or conventional breeding, iron-rich pearl millets, zinc-rich rice and so on. Harvest Plus is working. You just look at the slide. I am very much interested in showing the smallest tomato that is available. Dr. Oliver is sitting here in one of in the backyard of a hut in Collie Hills. We got this tomato material. When he chewed it, it was very, very, very tasty. It was not like our hybrid tomatoes where the flesh is so thick and so on. It was very enlivening. Similarly, the Kandari mirch I have displayed here. If you even accidentally if you touch it, we will get the pinch of the whole. So this is the kind of genetic diversity we have, and every location within our country, agroecological zone, have its unique diversity. And my previous speakers already mentioned that point. We are now started depending upon a very narrow range of animals and plants, and within them also the diversity is also getting very that is getting shrunken. So under these circumstances, the best way is to establish a grid of genetic gardens that is unique to each agroecological zone. We need to have these gardens. It should contain the valuable germplasm of these two types of material, and it's a center for documenting, conserving and preserving, propagating, distributing the valuable but the rapidly vanishing germplasm to the local communities to fight against malnutrition. We can fortify, artificially we can fortify the material, but when it is naturally available, the acceptance, it is also bioavailability is also very high and so on. The selection criteria, it should be nutri-dense rather than calorie-dense, and two sets of plants. We have examples like jujuba. We have in some parts of our country the jujubas fruits are very big, whereas in Tamil Nadu they are very small and so on. But if you are able to identify the genetically superior or the superior material and propagate it and made it available to all across our villages, by consuming one jujubas, you are almost consuming equal amount of vitamin C which can be derived from 3 apples. So that is the kind of material. I'll show, this is a, the favorite some slide of Professor. He used to talk about this moringa plant, which is highly rich in various, especially iron. And when it compare the iron levels within the plant, it is very much rich compared to spinach and other milk and so on. Similarly, orange-fleshed sweet potato in this hall, you heard about how she developed this orange-fleshed sweet potato, and also we have the indigenous material available. And these are all very, very strong examples how we can, food-based approaches can eliminate malnutrition in the country. And within this background, we have, started establishing a genetic garden within the foundation. This is to mainstream nutrition in the farming system. It is important to promote nutrition literacy that is coming up, but not just to one section of the society. All sections of the society need to get this information. Awareness can be promoted by understanding the nutritive value of different varieties. See, we are very knowledgeable. The moment I say papaya, yes, it is rich in vitamin A, but within papaya, we have identified more than 3 varieties now. And we don't have any data which material have rich and high amount of vitamin A and which material is very low in content and so on. The genetic garden will have different sections based on particular micronutrients like vitamin A, B, C, D, like that, minerals and so on. And it will also have an interpretation center and a greenhouse, a vegetative propagation center and so on. This will be a new kind of a botanical garden. It is not going to be the regular botanical garden where we visit in the hilltops and so on, which will have a live collection of natural and biofortified genetic resources. The garden will provide the farmers the crops that they can introduce in their farming system to address specific micronutrient deficiencies. Will also provide the consumers the nutritive value of the crop. So this is the background, and I will come to this slide straight away. The key functions, it's about collection of naturally nutrient-dense plants, a nursery for the rejuvenation, replenishing and associated activity, a seed bank for the XC2 conservation, a special conservation section for the vegetative propagated material, suitable agrotechnology development. Today morning I had a discussion with, we started growing greens here, but certain greens can grow only under a shade condition. We cannot grow it under a harsh sun and so on. But when we are thinking of giving this material to new farmers and so on, suitable agrotechnologies also need to be provided. Otherwise, we may provide the material, but at the end of the day, the end results may not get us the good results. Germplasm maintenance, including molecular and fingerprinting with suitable partners. It is not in the garden. Large scale multiplication and provision to the farmer. Interpretation center on the biofortified plants to the consumers. In this backdrop, we have established a small genetic garden of biofortified plants in the foundation. This is very close next to the touch and smell garden. We have divided around 8 sections here, having plant material for different micronutrients and vitamins, and a glimpse of around 31 different species and a few varieties of certain materials we have accumulated here based on the advice of Professor, and some of the the genetic garden at MSSRF. Some 4 photographs I have given. Those who have if you are interested, please visit the garden and give your suggestions so that we can improve the garden. Thank you very much.
You are all aware MS Swaminathan Foundation has been working with the tribal and marginal communities in 3 different hotspots of agrobiodiversity, namely Kolli Hills in Tamil Nadu, part of Eastern Ghats, and also Koraput in Odisha, and also in Kerala, Wayanad region of Kerala. We work with smallholders of marginal communities. And though they have rich agrobiodiversity in the past, due to various reasons, it started declining. And MSSRF has started addressing those issues, how that is linked with the food and nutrition security of the poor. What could be the agrobiodiversity and its contribution in their food and livelihood security in that region? we have indicators to showcase that those communities, they are deprived of calorie and also protein as well as micronutrient deficiency. By and large, they have a limited access to milk and also large extent to the fish. So they depend on the nutri-rich crops like millets and some pulses and so on. So those crops also started declining due to various pressures. And in that context, there could be how MSSRF has been working on how those existing agrobiodiversity can be linked with the farming system for nutrition that finally that can contribute to the food and nutrition security in the marginal communities. So we see that the 4 blocks here: conservation, production, consumption, and markets. I put it in the context of agrobiodiversity, where it all linked with the local institutions like seeds, sharing practices, seed banks, and also linking with different communities. It's a cultural linkage that contributed for conservation of agrobiodiversity. On the other hand, if you look at it, limited access to the so-called improved agronomic practices vis-a-vis these agrobiodiversity that also contributed to decline in terms of agrobiodiversity in those regions. And consumption practices also, if you look at the younger generation, there is a knowledge gap between the elder and younger that has also contributed for declining. And lack of market or not improved market for these agrobiodiversity also contributed its decline. So MSSRF, with the support of various agencies, thanks to Biodiversity International, IFAD, IDRC, NABARD, National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, we have extended many programs in participatory way with the local communities and tribal communities in that region. To begin with that, everything begins with knowledge, local knowledge. We call it as Biodiversity International talking about custodian farmers. Those farmers, they conserve, cultivate, and share and innovate with the fellow community. So these are the attributes that defines the custodian farmer. So MSSRF has documented the local knowledge linking to agrobiodiversity, whether it is a culinary preferences or adaptive preferences or productivity preferences of those local crops, and trying to recognize those farmers, those farm families in that region. This could be one method of linking the agrobiodiversity in the mainstream agricultural research. And also trying to document nutri-sensitive farming practices. If you look at the mixed farming system in a hilly region, they have series of crops that go by different sequence of harvest. If you look at very closely, those crop choices made by the local farmers, it has nutrition attributes. So based on that, they may have it may be climate sensitive agricultural farming system. At the same time, they have nutrition attributes too. So documentation of that knowledge and validating in the context of agriculture, putting in the farming system of nutrition is also imperative. And we also see that we hear from the morning the local knowledge, particularly the culinary diversity that starts from women and their contribution in terms of ratio, in terms of mix, in terms of recipes, what they make, and documentation of those knowledge and linking with the nutrition science is also very important. MSSRF has been doing that with the local tool called Seed Mela or the Food Mela. In the local villages, we used to do that. And also it can contribute, the local agrobiodiversity can contribute to the improvement, crop improvement. Say for example in Odisha, Kala Jira is the one variety that is over a period of 6-7 generations, our scientists, they have improved in participation with the local community. That has led to market. Similarly, we can have different examples that can contribute to the science as well as local level productivity enhancement. And finally, that leads to nutrition security as well. So how we do? We link it with local seed banks. We also involve farmers in the participatory varietal selection programs, wherein they evaluate the local material along with the improved material accessible from the agricultural research stations. So farmers were given option to make their own choices based on productivity preferences, culinary preferences, and also adaptive preferences. So that kind of science is essential, blending the local wisdom with the frontier technology. And I move on to the nutrition garden in the context of farming system for nutrition. Thanks to IDRC for supporting that in the since 2011 and 13, and where we have taken up this nutrition garden, linking with local cultivars as well as with the improved varieties. Lot of vegetables has extended to them. That has contributed for incremental usage in their household kitchen. And also, if you look at that, over a period of time, when we encourage that kind of practices with the local communities, diversity in terms of crop as well as dietary diversity also have increased over a period of time. And thanks to NABARD, there are projects, you look at Wadi, across the country they have. And now there is a time for moving from agroforestry to nutri-farms. Now you see here in Kolli Hills of Eastern Ghats, MSSRF has extended agroforestry program with the support of NABARD, wherein the local community, they have made their their physical asset converted into a productive asset in the context of integrating horticulture and nutritious crops as well as greens and animal husbandry and water. So there is a lot of connection. This provides them kind of endurance and ability to combat any kind of crisis if they come across. And interestingly, when they grow this kind of agroforestry, linking to the farming and also nutrition subject, they could access different kinds of green from the agroforestry system. So this has contributed a lot. That kind of change from the agroforestry to the nutri-farm is very much essential. And critically, if you look at the usage of agrobiodiversity, I put it in the context of millets. If you look at, there are 6 different minor millets or now it's a nutri millets, and set aside finger millet, even the kodo millet or proso millet, foxtail millet. Lot of diversity is there. And if you look at the available technology, even today there are certain species of millets need support from R&D, particularly for the processing, emery technology, sorting machine, and so on. So those things are very important. That can ensure this should be addressed at the farm level. That can provide food and nutrition security at the farm gate or at the household level. And skill building is very important, particularly looking at the women and men. It can be done. This will lead to markets, the local crops and diversity that can reach to the local community as well as to the urban elites market. But in this context, it is very imperative nutrient analysis of those crops. That is very important, so that the larger urban food basket will have more nutritive crops. In that, branding for the local crops is also very essential. We have made it in the context of Kolli Hills, and now these products reaches to the many urban markets, and also fetches income, and the value chain development for local crops provides income opportunity for the local poor. And popularizing these kind of efforts is essential. Many times, we talk about valorizing the main crops, and valorizing the local crops is very essential, and linking and placing that in different platforms, right from local rural theatre to the policymaker at different levels, placing them, and that will give image. And engaging youth and Panchayat Raj institutions and state is also very, very imperative. And we work with the CRISAT also in the Smart Food program. Thanks to that, this will give an image for the local crop. And finally, genetic and nutrition literacy. Thanks to Professor and MSSRF has taken a pioneering initiative on 3 different acts: Biodiversity Act in the country, Protection of Plant Variety and Farmers' Rights Act, and Food Security Act. I see, there is a lot of interconnect between these 3 acts. We can provide rights to the farmers, and those local crops can be valorized and improved, and that can reach the market. So this is how we do science-based, participatory, enabling the local capacity and building the grassroots. So finally, this one, even though we have done this has to be scaled up to different ecological and social conditioning elsewhere in the country. For that, strengthening the local seed system is very important. Farm level processing unit, value chain intervention for local crops, product development based on nutrient rights. NIN they have done a lot of work, but there are opportunities to explore further, particularly in the context of the richness that we have in the country. And FPOs, farmer producer organization, those who are dealing with agrobiodiversity, they need to be provided with incentives. And public-private partnership is also very essential. Thank you very much.
but I'm a little perplexed, sir, and I would like to share some of my concerns with you, keeping in totality some of the things that we are talking. It appears to me that we are between a devil and a deep sea. We want to have enhanced productivity. One side we are talking about increasing population, more food, more nutrition, less water, less labor. Yes, it is a dogma in itself. But we seem to be overemphasizing that the world food is coming from a very few crops, and we always seem to be giving overemphasis on that we are dependent on these crops. If you split nutrition from a caloric perspective, from a protein requirement perspective, from vitamin and a mineral perspective, calorie requirement should predominantly come from rice, wheat, maize and such other crops. The extent to which you require the calorie, the same amount you don't require the protein to that extent. The total quantum of cultivation of crops will be to that extent less, and much more lesser is our requirement of vitamin A or for that matter iron. So to that extent the total fragment in the cultivation in terms of area will certainly, these crops will be less. So let us not be too much worried about and overemphasize the fact that whole of our crop is coming. It will continue to come in because we require more of carbohydrates than proteins and more of fats from proteins. So let us be very clear and let us not confuse. But what I am really worried is, sir, the farmer appears to be the only person who buys everything retail and markets everything wholesale. You made a policy decision that 50% of more than the cost of production should be made available to the farmers. That was very recently discussed threadbare in the parliament, and for some reason it is not being accepted as a viable solution. I do not know for what reason. No matter what we talk about food and nutritional security, unless at the highest level the policy decision is taken to support a policy that you enshrined, which is still mathematically and ecologically, economically sound, because tomorrow Dr. Ramesh Chand is coming, a man who can make a policy at the highest level. No matter what we talk, unless support price is given to the farmers, I don't think it will make, there is no fun in asking farmers to grow more pulses, but they produce 4 million tons, we are not able to give them the kind of support price that they want. Either we should not tell them to cultivate, or if they cultivate, we should be able to buy them. We are talking climate change more or less in this country from the perspective of southwest monsoon. We don't seem to differentiate that the climate change will have differential impact for the southwest monsoon versus the northeast monsoon. Much of the Tamil Nadu and the eastern coast will be devastating impact of the cyclonic effects, maybe tsunami kind of an effects. That requires a different kind of an ecosystem approach, agrobiodiversity approach, which is very much different than what we talk for the mainland. I think Tamil Nadu and such other states should take into cognizance your own effort in planting a row of trees and preventing the tsunami should be an example as to the kind of agrobiodiversity that we should be talking about in many others. Nutrition without food safety is useless. One side I want to take tomatoes, one side I want to eat peppers, one side I want to eat leafy vegetables. Another side there is a pesticide residue, aflatoxins, heavy metal contamination, and unless nutrition is addressed together in totality with the issue of food safety, I have to make a real difficult choice between food safety. Today, if the price of tomato is 100 rupees, 120 rupees, and left and right sprayed with insecticides because it is so costly, should I eat tomatoes for the nutritional value, or should I be bothered about the pesticide residues? This is a decision that most of us are often thrown into these kinds of things. Ecosystem services are the foundations of the sustainable agrobiodiversity system. There is a need for more quantification of the kind of ecosystem services that most of us are talking. Without that, it will not be very much which will not be sustainable. The last point I would like to say is, are we focusing on productivity or are we focusing on sustainability? Is sustainability and productivity are two parallel lines? They are inversely proportional, or can science make them to be positively going in the same direction, and in what way the science can contribute? What is the role of rice in that? What is the role of millets in that? What is the role of underutilized vegetables in that is not the question. It is a question of how we can address in totality the sustainable agriculture through agrobiodiversity for food, and more than the food, it is the nutritional security that we are talking. South Asia, as the AVRDC has said, the poorest of the poor require iron, they require vitamin A, they require, in fact, most of the vegetarians, check your blood levels, you will be poor in vitamin D and B12. That seems to be the thing that really bothers, and with age, if you really see, most of them have very poor bones because certainly your vitamin D levels are low, and B12 is also very low. No matter whatever you eat, especially among vegetarians, your bones cannot be strong. So nutrition should also be looked from the perspectives of a child, from the perspectives of a woman, from the perspectives of a rural poor, and more importantly, as I said earlier, from the aging population. We have multiple dimensional problems that we are talking. Some of the problems are regional, some of the problems are global. Biodiversity conservation is regional, climate change is global in nature. And these cannot be addressed with the same ruler that we are addressing. I think it requires a much more kind of a brainstorming if we have to address. I'll not go more into this. If all of you permit, a couple of questions can be taken and addressed to the speakers. Thank you very much.
You know, it is quite a dilemma that you raise, that in high biodiversity areas with lot of traditional knowledge of food and their own diversities, there seems to be malnutrition. And I'm sure there are many reasons that we have to explore and find. But I was wondering if one of the important ones is not of the young people losing the taste for traditional foods. If I go by the enthusiasm for, Lay's potato chips and Maggi noodles in rural Meghalaya, and for Kentucky Fried Chicken in Shillong, I'd suspect that's a serious problem. What do you folks do to bring back taste, to revitalize taste amongst the young for your traditional foods?
I am Ravichandran, farmer from Tiruvallur district, Tamil Nadu. Dr. Krishna Kumar, he mentioned about the minimum support price. Actually, we are the ones who produce a nutrition-rich food. But however, we lack one single nutrition, that is vitamin M. Unless we have minimum support price that is, that is sufficient for us, it will be very difficult for us to produce, to stick on to agriculture. This is one of the main problems we face. And question to Dr. Geeta Lakshmi, you mentioned about this CH4 emission by rice. Perhaps you may remember, you visited my field and conducted a field trial on the impact of azolla on CH4. Azolla, it absorbs, CH4. So what is the outcome of your research work?
Our speaker mentioned about shift from agroforestry to nutri-garden. So if you can kindly elaborate what is the linkage between the existing agroforestry and the nutri-garden?
This question is for Dr. Kathiresan. Thank you very much for your very interesting and enlightening presentation. The question I have for you is this. The nutritional improvement levels that you showed, over what period of time did it happen? And do you have any information on the dietary intake of the people who participated in the intervention? That's the question. The other observation is on the esteemed chair's remarks about vegetarians having low B12 and other levels and vitamin D levels. Though the truth is that it is so, it need not necessarily be. A vegetarian diet need not necessarily be a deficient diet either in B12 or in vitamin D, because more than vegetarianism, there is a growing population of vegans who are very conscious of the climate change impact on animal food and so on, and they remain perfectly healthy. It's knowing, having the affordability, the ability to have access to foods, and also to have the knowledge and to have the right type of diet that really makes a difference. Thank you.
Yeah, actually the point raised by gentleman there is very valid. That's in fact one of the most worrying things for us. That's what I said, that we would like to see more research done on what is the reason of malnutrition in the middle of such high biodiversity. So that is definitely there. But the question is, what are we doing about it? That, even in the villages, even in the most remote villages in Meghalaya, where vehicles, there's only one bus that comes once a week, it will still have its stock of Uncle Chips and Maggi. Yes, that's, we do realize that, And you see, this is the thing that we would like research to go deeper, in the sense that whoever has made Nestle or whoever Maggie has made, they have done good research, to find out what is the taste that will touch the maximum number of people, So this is the kind of research our dietitians should do, or our cooks should do. But definitely we also in NESFAS, in our small way, we have got, as I had indicated to you, we have a Chefs Alliance. And this Chefs Alliance is also working with the Indian Institute of Hotel Management also in various aspects. We're trying to address this problem. We will not be able to address it in one day or 1 year even, but we are on the way. It's such that our indigenous foods, we are, as I had indicated, making also fusion foods with our professional chefs and our Indian chefs, and making fusion foods which are becoming attractive for the youth, because it's the youth that get affected by all these commercial foods. So these fusion foods are also being, as I had said, we are through our Meram Au cafes, or the Mother Earth cafes. So I'm not saying that they are very popular yet, but it's starting to get popularity, and we're starting to get these foods into the palate, the palate of the youth. We are definitely trying it, but then I'm not saying that we are very successful yet, but we are on the way definitely, and we feel that we are in the right way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Actually, the assessment was a baseline survey, and the terminal impact assessment was done by third party, the PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I remember the data was around 250 grams per month of fish, that increased up to 2 kg a month after intervention. And maybe if my memory is correct, it is 0.5 kg to 1.7 kg or something monthly intake of poultry meat. So other data I may have to look back into my files. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravichandran sir. I'm really happy to see you here. And we did a lot of studies even after the field intervention which we made at your field. Azolla definitely has a positive impact on reducing the methane emission, because it increases the oxygen concentration within the soil and within the water which is available in the rice field. So we have made so many in-depth analysis, and we have got reports to share with you. Maybe I will definitely share with you, sir. Thank you very much for your cooperation in this regard.
So with regard to that agroforestry and nutri-farms, we are actually trying to establish in partnership with the local community. They have usually 2 or 3 acres of land, physical asset land, which is underutilized or cultivated by monocrops, tapioca, or even it could be monocrop of coffee or pepper or something like that. So now they have got the option of converting 1 acre of land into a nutri-farm that consists of nutri-dense perennial crops, and there is a chance for establishing a small farm pond where they culture fish that has animal husbandry, and they introduce intercropping of millets also in that farm that provide opportunity for cultivating greens. So it is in 1 acre farm they can establish multiple crops, based on different seasonality. There are certain crops perennial in nature. There are certain crops, seasonal in nature. So the farm family will have continuous access to different nutrient-dense crops in that same farm. So that is why usually in agroforestry system 1 or 2 crops exist. The density will be very, very less. This will be high density, but based on the season and based on the nutrition of the crop, the crop choices were made. And this will be like it will be a kind of 10 years program that starts in partnership with the local community, supported by NABARD. So that is how we are establishing in Kolli Hills. So with the permission of the chairman, we thank each and every one of you for sharing your thoughts and listening to us. And I hope this should have been a very wonderful experience. We're having listen from a different ecological system, different cultural groups, and now we see that there is a potential and immense possibility of taking advantage of the agrobiodiversity in our country. And as a team, we can take this agrobiodiversity forward for the betterment of not only the local communities and also the nutri-rich food emanating from agrobiodiversity that need to reach to the urban consumer. So thank you very much, one and all.